Well, good evening again, and on behalf of Naropa Institute, I'd like to welcome you to the Tibetan Buddhist class, Tibetan Buddhist Path class. Before Rinpoche's lecture begins, I'd like to clarify some of the administrative procedures which we will be following over the next few weeks. First, this class will be held 3 times a week, on Wednesday and Friday evenings at 7:30, and Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Students at Naropa will be admitted to this class on the following basis. All full and part-time students. If you have friends who would like to hear Rinpoche speak, you can obtain a guest pass for them at the Naropa office for $1 between 9 to 5. Finally, the Tibetan Buddhist meditation class will be held tonight after this class. And we'd like to ask you to clear the hall because I think we're expecting a monsoon in the desert, so. But please clear the hall after this lecture and before the next one. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first session of our particular course. In this particular course, we are trying to cover areas that need to understand greatly, and also areas that you might have misunderstood greatly by misinformation and readings and other things that might have happened in the past. I'm hoping that most of you people here in this particular course have gone through and have studied already or read certain books on the connecting subject. I thought that based on your interest to take such a course. But however, that I want you to feel very relaxed and open to the situation that if you have no ideas about Buddhism, basically, that don't worry. I would like to try to make it as simple as possible for you to understand the basic language, basic analysis, and metaphysical development that follows. So another request I would like to have very strongly is hopefully that you'll be able to attend every session, every talk that was given here, so that you don't have any discrepancies as to that you don't miss any points that was mentioned, possibly mentioned in the previous talk, that might be referred to the next talk, so you have complete comprehension. And the point here is not necessarily that we are trying to make you as great scholars as such, or great meditators for that matter, but have some kind of understanding of the Buddhist geography, that the map that Buddha has laid and that it developed throughout the tradition, that you will have a complete gift package deal, so to speak, understanding of what Buddhism means, what it teaches to you, and how it applies to you personally, intellectually, personally, and so forth. Which is very important, extremely important for you to understand that unless you have some understanding of the geography or the basic situation, how Buddhism becomes an important part of your life and your scholarship, whatever, that if you're trying to collect highlights alone, there is a strong possibilities that you might misunderstand and possibilities that you might distort in terms of your own practices or whatever. So I want you to know that it is requested very strongly if you can attend this given course, of the first course, without missing one talk. That is highly recommended. And I don't have to repeat all over again at the beginner's level. And you have some understanding, and you begin to settle down. My personal way of presenting language, ideas, and place, and so forth. So I want you to take heed on that, and please try to discipline yourself as much as the time and situation permitting to you, that trying to sit through the whole thing. And it might become sometimes situations present itself and it may be boring, maybe repetitious, but it is worthwhile to sit through and try to understand it. And hopefully, as big as audience is happening at this point, is enormous. It could be hardly said as a classroom. But however, I have a trust that we could communicate, we could work together. And I would like to see some of the faces at the back. If you can switch on the light at the back so I can see people down there, I could see them, their faces. Thank you. Hi there. Here it goes. Now I am actually beginning. Tonight, I would like to begin our course extremely simply and directly to understand the basic ground. What does it mean to understand spirituality? We could get into a Buddhist situation later on. And we are going to discuss the basic spirituality. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to us? How we could do it. How we could understand intuitively and intellectually. So, there is the first biggest problem that we always face is whenever we talk about spirituality, there is always a problem goes along with it, because searching for spiritual enlightenment is man's highest goal, transcending politician, being statesman, and transcending millionaireship, transcending anything that exists on this earth, and the materialistically speaking, the spiritual search and spiritual achievement, and spiritual enlightenment, and the spiritual power is regarded as one of the most highest thing, the greatest thing that mankind ever could achieve. That is true. Enlightenment is the highest thing that we could ever achieve. Beyond being president, beyond being millionaire, beyond being whatever, great poet, great writer, whatever, the spiritual achievement is regarded as the most highest thing, the greatest thing that we could ever comprehend and ever become a powerful person, personality-wise, and wisdom-wise, and so forth. We all know that, we all acknowledge that, but at the same time, we have a lot of problems with that. Can you hear me at the back? Very faint? that we know in the ordinary case of our life situation that even though we become a successful person in life, highly powerful person in society, whatever, that we still we are speedy, we are not restful, we don't have a peace of mind, that we become victim of ourselves, as we know that. And such laws were taught for a long time, and by now you must understand the basic ideas of that basic spirituality, that a spiritual cost is one of man's highest search that ever made, and it is the case, it is so. I feel that I don't have to go over this particular subject again and again, that convincing you that that is the highest and the best that mankind ever come up with idea. I have a trust that you have understood, and because of that you come here, that you have experience, you want to have experience of that. The basic point, oops. Can somebody keep a track on that? Maybe problem with the wiring. There's no loose kids? That point, what I'm going to raise, is having prepared already such ground that spirituality is the highest thing, and it gives you a certain experience and heighten one's experience and wisdom, openness, skillfulness, infinite number of them. But we have one big problem, gigantic, enormous problem there, that how we are actually working on such situation, knowing that this is the greatest gift that mankind ever have received. How are we going to handle this greatest gift? How are we going to handle it? Well, ordinarily we will say that I'm going to get it. There's nothing else to say. I will let it get it, and I will let it make my best to distribute that if I got it. Hopefully I got it, I get it. Well, it seemed to be sometimes. It seemed to be a very simple thing to say. I'm going to get it. I will get it. I'm going to search for that. My teeth and claw. If this need fasting for 12 years in the desert, I am going to do it. If you recommend me, dear teacher, I'll do it. Anything you say. As long as you promise that I'm going to do it, I'm going to get it. Well, there's some kind of catch there. We are asking, who are we? Before we do that, who's going to get it? What is going to get it? What is you? What is me? That is the greatest question, greatest important basic point that had Buddha has put this problem into thinking situation of humanity. and to rediscover or find out whether there is anything to rediscover at all. Who are you? What am I? Usually, we begin to feel if there is me, I'm going to benefit by it, and I'm become a great, powerful person. And that has become a question, problem actually, rather than question. That we have to find out, study together this point. Supposing if you, so-called you, which we do not know whether we exist or not, but so-called you got enlightenment or become enlightened, then what? Of course, automatic answer is then, of course, I become a Buddha, enlightened one. I preach the law. I tell my wisdom to those people who are there. So there is enormous snobbishness involved with that particular approach. Put it very lightly. Let's not say deception. You might find that when we talk about snobbishness, you might find it very light and harmless, but actually it is extraordinarily deadly, powerful, that you are about to become egomaniac. You are becoming egomaniac. Not only you are about to, that you are thinking that you could become the Buddha himself and preach the law and gather all kinds of disciples and glow your halos all over you and command people to do this, do that, don't do this, don't do this. It's very tricky, extremely tricky, and extremely dangerous. We know in the history of our world, on this earth, planet Earth, we have stories of all kinds of people who've done that in the past. Adolf Hitler, for one thing, Mussolini for another, and all kinds of people who attempted to do such thing and failed, but who have succeeded. That we know that those people try to seek some kind of enlightenment through their ego, through their basic pride that I exist, therefore my project should exist forever and ever. That has become a problem, enormous problem, great problem. So, if we're going to discuss spirituality at this point in this particular class, I feel very nervous myself, and so should you, that we are not building mutual deceptions between each other, that you become little Hitlers. And I become the creator of that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a very serious question. Humorous as well at the same time. It's almost pop art. So presenting the teaching of spirituality properly, that you have to have very good understanding of basic sanity, and also you have to have a good understanding of basic materialism spiritually. And we have coined this word called spiritual materialism. Spiritual materialism. That might speak you something, the spiritually materialistic, that using the name of spirituality and egohood, trying to become a greater person, a wise person, which is very dangerous and very problematic. And it not only destroy you, but destroy whole wisdom of humanity. And it is, in fact, Satanism. So we should think very carefully about that particular concern. We should discuss that particular situation very clearly, very openly to each other, and to try to understand what that means. So I hope that I would like to devote certain part of my course, this first stage, for you to understand the meaning of spiritual materialism. We, of course, intellectualize the whole thing, and we could also identify with ourselves, but I feel that whatever we do, both of those possibilities are open, that we shouldn't kid ourselves around. We're saying that only thing that we can do here is to get off in the path. Now that you boarded on the airplane of an Arupa Institute, let's turn on the engine. Let's fly. Let us make ourselves into a cosmic transcendental airline. Let everybody be the passenger. Let's fly above the sun and the moon and the universe. It's very easy to say. Easy to say, but it is not difficult to do that. Since everybody is sitting on the ground, sitting on the floor, and nobody can get an inch off the ground if you want, physically and spiritually, absolutely not. Maybe psychologically you think you are doing, but then that is another spiritual materialism. So I'm sorry to be such ordinary and down, but I think that particular approach is absolutely necessary in order to build this particular journey which will take off the ground. Before we do that, we have to understand where we are. If you want to fly, in an airplane, you can't just fly. You have to make money. And you have to think how much it costs to buy a ticket. And then that's not enough. But then you have to go to the airport, you have to book your ticket, and you have to find out your flight number and what particular airline you're flying. And then you have to walk, and also you have to find out what gate number you're flying. And then you have to board into the airplane. You have to stop your cigarettes out. You have to walk, check your baggage. And then also you have to find your seat number where you're sitting in. And then you have to fasten your seat belts and put up your tray table and your seat bag. You have to go through all those formalities. Otherwise, you don't have a safe journey, as they say. Regarding the question of spiritual materialism, that self-oriented pursuit which dedicated to pursuing a self, ego, to become oneself a greater and powerful person. That if you use mantras, chantings, meditations, all kinds, that you think you're going to get greater person, greater personality, greater individual who could trod on the path. But on the other hand, you can ignore the whole thing, just chant mantra beautifully, ignore the whole thing, and not caring about an ego or anything else, just as if you never heard of such thing. One can do that, but still it is spiritual materialism, that you are deceiving yourself. That there is enormous problems with that. So tonight I would like to introduce the basic notion, basic idea as to what does mean spiritual materialism from the point of view of ego orientation. That you wanted to achieve certain particular result, cause and effect, because of practicing in a certain way that you get what you want, and then you can use it as if that automatic rifle was presented to your 3-year-old son, who then can actualize the cowboy and Indians, and he could bang, bang, bang round. Actually, you could hear the bang, bang, bang going, and you could appreciate that. Gee, isn't it fantastic? I could actually do it. I don't have to fantasize myself in the television anymore. I could become the cowboy. Maybe we've been watching too much televisions nationwide, and we got these ideas. Sense of not knowing where the responsibility lies, where the game lies, where the kick out lies. That has become a tremendous problem. And we could sit down here and say that now, if you sit down in 3 minutes and say a certain particular word, by saying so, you're going to get enlightened. That is extremely cheap, unreasonable. That undermines human dignity, that human beings possess, supposed to possess some kind of intelligence as to develop some kind of critical attitude to what you're doing, and you're supposed to see through that. So that is the basic point where spiritual materialism could cut through by your own self-existing irony, critical attitude to cutting through that kind of deception. And that is where the function of enlightenment lies, that you can't be all that deceptive, you can't be all that challenged, and you can't be all that gullible and a coward. So that is where the possibilities lies. Otherwise, there's no point in talking about enlightenment. Absolutely not. And we should have more trust in a computer. Everything's mechanized. But since everything's not mechanized, everything's experiential, therefore there's strong possibilities to fight back against such spiritual materialism, which is an extremely important point that I would like to make, is that that's the key point, that there is the cynical attitude that exists within us, that one wonders, should I give in to my cynical attitude? Or maybe I should give in. Maybe I should go through the whole way. At this point, it is absolutely necessary to understand basic spirituality, to go along with a cynical attitude, questioning everything, not necessarily intellectual, logical, metaphysical way, but experientially, trying to go along with that particular approach is extremely important. So that is the first step, as well as the first step for you to be a student here, to how to sharpen your intellect. That don't buy anything that is presented about a question. And hopefully we have more chance to discuss in the discussion period, whatever, that we have a chance to interact. And cynical, critical questions and cynical and critical thinking is extremely important to wake ourselves up. Otherwise, we are completely lame, blind, that you just be fed through the intravenous system. So let us not be in hospital. Let us be a full living person who could actually relate with what's being presented, critically could think and work out, understand, or anything that you don't understand could be questioned. And that is very important. Nothing to do with becoming an intellectual person as such, but that is also intuitive process, intuitive style, as well at the same time. So tonight's session is being introductory thing. I would like to therefore tell you how to handle yourselves and how to just basic approach, how to relate with the whole situation that is studying and taking part in this particular class. And now I would like to open to a question if you have anything to ask.
When you were talking about snobbishness and like when you obtain enlightenment, to avoid ego trips, you said that you should avoid this because this is, then you said a word that I didn't understand. You either said satanistic or sadistic, either meaning good or bad balance or being sadistic, like punishing yourself. What did you mean?
I don't remember that particular second part.
Okay. It was well, I guess I'd like for you to just talk a little bit more about, like, realizing, like, if you realize that you've grown spiritually, what should you do with that? You know, as far as interrelating the balance of your ego and your spirit.
I could say in a very simple few words, that is, let us mock the ego, but let us build our spirit. Spirit in this case as a sense of inquisitiveness, that something might have happened. There's a possibility of something's taking place. But ego's approach is that going to be good for me? Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? If I get it, how much it is money's worth, so to speak. That is taking place all the time. I'm sorry, I don't think I have answered your complete question. But we could work out again. Anybody else? Try to make a question. At this point, I would like to ask you to ask the questions very simply and very basic. We could get into the depth as we go on. So try to work on the questions as something very basic, if you like, which will be helpful. Because when you ask your questions, you are sharing with the rest of the community here as well at the same time. Thank you. Somebody there? Yeah?
How do you take a basic cynical attitude? What's one step in being able to question everything without your ego interfering?
Well, the question is that you don't have to have complete clearance without ego, particularly, which is impossible in any case. But as long as you have a glimpse of a cynical attitude, which is some kind of self-consciousness, self-critical attitude, at the same time there is a desire to be further, greater, expand your spiritual journey, that is enough. But one doesn't have to make 100% reassurance that you don't have to use your ego, which is impossible actually. So one have to give in to your ego as well as one have to give in one's intuition at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah?
If you find it easy to be critical and cynical, how does that fit in with surrender, or the ability to give in and sort of to follow somebody else? If you find that very difficult.
I don't think that's particularly problematic as such. That giving in also comes along with a cynical attitude. That having developed already basic cynical attitude to oneself and all kinds of trips that are being laid on us, and because of that, that you begin to find that there is a way, there's openness, that one's own cynical begin to dissolve. Another word, one's own cynicalness begin to bounce back on you. The cynical approach is not so much of directed to outward, but also bounce back on us at the same time. So by that kind of approach, you can work with it. But I mean, it's very difficult to say here, but you have to experiment. You have to work it throughout.
Rinpoche, my question is similar. I'm intrigued by your statements about our need for some critical, cynical thinking, yet I also have in mind the need for faith. And I was wondering, on what can this faith be based? Is it merely an intellectual agreement with things like Four Noble Truths? We certainly need something to base our commitment to openness to entering the stream. What is it?
Well, you see, the point is that the Four Noble Truths begin to become a symbol of our cynical approach. Once we begin to relate with such things as the Four Noble Truths, they are the cynical approach that Buddha presented to us to work on. And it is a workable situation automatically that when we think in terms of suffering, for instance, we begin to realize that suffering is obviously possible, that it is part of our being. So you begin to feel that you're being soaked in some kind of truth. And that point, that cynical attitude is again, how about if we are soaked in the suffering, that particular truth, how about getting out of it, which is the second noble truth, and so forth, that the path is organic from that point of view, as long as the person has that particular cynical attitude, that all the jnanas that were presented by the Buddha becomes organic automatically. It is workable.
In your discussion of spiritual materialism, you imply that it's possible to both develop spiritually as well as develop the ego. I have two questions. One is, isn't this a contradiction? And two, with the rise of spirituality in America today, aren't we in danger then that some people will use spirituality to increase their power?
Well, let me answer your question twofold. The first thing is sorry.
The first part is that you're implying in your discussion of spiritual materialism that it is possible to both become more spiritually enlightened as well as develop the ego at the same time.
Okay, let's stop there. The question is that technically, or as been described by scriptures, you can't become spiritually oriented or spiritually highly evolved if you start with the ego. But maybe socially, and maybe from your own point of view, that you think you're getting kick out of that, which is no spirituality, but nothing but egohood, egomaniac level. The second one is
Okay. The second question is, with the rise of spirituality in America today, it seems to me, I'll make a statement, which I'd like you to respond to. It seems to me that we are in danger of people using spiritual techniques or spiritual materialism in the service of their ego to increase their power.
I think that particular one is what we're aiming at is the propagator of spiritual materialists, that if anybody is presenting that as if a business transaction, as if you are signing contract with a mafioso, that if you sign your name on the dotted line, you're going to get what you want, otherwise your brain is blown. And that kind of, commitment or not. If you commit, you're going to be okay, you're going to be enlightened. And such sort of extreme case is extremely materialistic. In fact, it is demonic from that point of view. So I was trying to secure this ground for us as students here to present the case to everyone that there is spiritual materialism. There is also possibilities of transcending that particular, getting off that mafioso trip. There is possibility. But so far what we have been receiving in the popular level anyway, in this country, United States of America, is concerned, it has been cheated somewhat. And people have misunderstood a great deal. And spirituality become propagating another kind of empire, which is not so good. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have to close our meeting here tonight. And pleased that you are full up with the questions. We could discuss next time when we get together again. And what I want you to do is just to study and think about it, work out, and next time that we could discuss the situations of actually following the path as such. We could discuss that next time. So, I think that this particular session is over. Thank you very much.